Join us in a festival that promises to be extraordinary, because Bali is extraordinary.
Oke, selamat sore semuanya. Boleh minta suaranya dong? Masih ada semangat nggak semuanya? Semangat dong. Selamat datang di Ubud Writers and Readers Festival 2021. Kebetulan cue card saya bahasa Indonesia ya, nggak yang kayak tadi ya. Tahun ini festival Ubud Writers and Readers Festival ini hadir kembali dengan tema Mulat Satria, itu refleksi. Mulat Sarira, refleksi diri yang diambil dari filosofi Hindu Bali. Ini acaranya udah berlangsung dari tanggal 8 sampai 17 Oktober 2021. Kita akan mengeksplorasi refleksi diri, introspeksi budaya, dan hak asasi manusia. Ini yang memiliki siapa diri kita, apa yang menyatukan dan memisahkan kita, dan apa yang mendorong setiap tindakan kita. Jadi kurang lebih begitu ya teman-teman. Oke, perkenalkan, nama saya Abdul Hadi. Oke, salam kenal semuanya. Dan saya nggak sendirian karena ini bersama tamu-tamu yang super kece nih. Ada 4 orang nih. Tepuk tangan dulu dong buat mereka dong. Yo. Ini dari yang sebelah sana ada Mr. Rodney Glick. Suaranya harus keras ya, kalau enggak kalian gajinya terlambat. Oke? Terus ada juga Michelle Anindya. Terus ada juga Edi. Ada juga Mr. Tony van der Hout. Jadi kita di sini relax aja, nyantai, kita ngobrol-ngobrol bareng. Nanti teman-teman boleh siapin pertanyaan. Karena pertanyaan yang paling menarik nanti akan mendapatkan 1 unit Avanza berupa brosur. Ya, tidak sabar ya. Jadi teman-teman nanti boleh siapin pertanyaan karena nanti akan ada sesi tanya jawab. Dan buat teman-teman yang lagi di rumah juga yang lagi nonton live streaming, bisa langsung aja komen pertanyaannya, nanti kita akan bacain ya. Oke, ini setelah tadi kenal-kenal, ini kita nih sekarang lagi ada di sesi book launch, yaitu Bali Coffee Origin New Wave. Oke, dan ini keempat orang ini adalah di balik suksesnya buku itu ya, sampai launching gitu maksudnya. Mungkin dari Mr. Rodney dulu bisa cerita, Mr. Rodney ini siapakah Mr. Rodney ini? Silakan. Oh iya, semua emang. With mic, pakai mic.
Why am I? Is it a question?
Yes.
Why am I? Oh, that's not part of the questions. Yeah, we don't have that long. My name is Rodney Glick. I am the Director of Coffee at Seniman and a co-founder with Eddie of Karana Global, a green bean processing coffee company, selling green beans to roasters and exporting green beans around the world. I'm also the co-author of the book Bali Coffee Origins New Wave, which is why you're all here.
Jadi Mr. Rodney ini adalah salah satu yang buat buku Bali Coffee Bali Coffee Origins New Wave. Nah, itu ya. Sorry ya teman-teman, saya soalnya lama di Ukraina. Jadi bahasa Inggrisnya agak beda ya. Mungkin sekarang pertanyaan buat Michelle juga yang buat bukunya ini. Judul buku ini kan Bali Coffee Origin New Wave. Bali Coffee berarti bukunya tentang kopi yang ada di Bali, Namun apa maksud dari origin new wave-nya? Mungkin misal bisa menjelaskan.
Okay, so the title of the book is Bali Coffee, Origins New Wave. And Bali Coffee, obviously, it's about the coffee traditions and coffee history, coffee cultures in Bali, both the history and also the contemporary. And we decided on a more contemporary title, which is Origins New Wave. And this concept of origin and the concept of new wave is something that people in the specialty coffee industry often talk about, which is the coffee waves. And the origin is the place where the coffee is usually sourced. And in here, coffee is usually sourced from around the world, including in Brazil, Ethiopia, and also in Indonesia and Java, which is historically one of the first biggest coffee producers around the world. And in this book, we specifically talk about Bali coffee, which is the origins of Bali coffee.
In coffee speak, you go into many coffee shops, and often the coffee presented to you will be something said about the coffee. They'll explain some tasting notes, and they'll serve the coffee, and they'll say, this is a third wave coffee shop. That's a very common way to introduce customers to different coffee shops around the world. Except that the third wave, when people are saying the third wave of coffee, they're actually referring to a very specific historical series of waves, American. The history of those waves, when people speak about waves in coffee, they're American historical waves of coffee. That does not necessarily relate to many of the coffee growing countries around the world. And so, we were thinking that it is time to actually realize that waves happen in different waves. Waves happen all the time, but waves happen differently and not always in the way that the American system works. So Indonesia has coffee waves, different history of coffee, but they're not lined up with an American system. So this book is focused on the fact that Bali grows coffee, number one, so it's an origin. And number two, that it has its own energy. And coffee growing countries are now, just now over the last 5 years, slowly having their own independence and their own energy within the coffee world. So coffee growing is not always export anymore. The domestic market is now growing, there's a middle class, and that domestic market is drinking their own coffee. So that becomes a powerful change within the world of how coffee is often seen. So coffee is not just grown in Indonesia and then exported somewhere else. Coffee is now grown in Indonesia and then sold to other Indonesian coffee roasters and then sold to an Indonesian public. So this book is a statement about there's a shift happening, a shift within the belt of the coffee growing region, and that coffee growing regions are called origins. And so this is an example by using Bali as an example, but it's a worldwide example that's happening, where origins within that belt, Brazil, Colombia, Ethiopia, Kenya, all these places, Yemen maybe not, but within all those places, there is a growing middle class. And with a growing middle class, there's a focus on their agricultural produce. And with a focus on agricultural produce comes an interest in their own stuff. And that is what's taking place in Indonesia. And the book is basically focused, using Bali as an example to what is happening in the world.
Cukup panjang juga ya.
You want to translate that?
Saya kasih pertanyaan lagi ya. Jadi nih ya, Mr. Rodney. Jadi di halaman buku ini kan Anda bercerita tentang perbedaan coffee waves yang berdasarkan skema Barat dan Indonesia nih. Apa perbedaannya? Apakah sangat berbeda sekali? Dan apakah new wave ini juga terjadi di luar negeri?
I sort of touched on it. That the waves of coffee that everyone knows and talks about in the world is usually related to American waves, American history. This is a statement saying, actually, Indonesia has its own history of coffee, and we have our own waves within that history. They sometimes link up in a timeline, but they're not the same waves. Except that the book is focused mainly from 2015. And in 2015, a person won the Barista Championship using a particular style of coffee, where he related processing coffee to the wine industry. And from that moment on, as we see in the book, those two waves, the American wave and say an Indonesian wave, they actually link up in 2015, where origin becomes the focus in a coffee sense, in a production sense. And no longer is it subservient to an export market.
Oh, jadi emang perbedaannya tuh ada lah ya, kurang lebih ya, Mister ya. Nah, ini buat misalnya, apakah dalam pembuatan buku ini ada kendala kesulitan dalam hal apanya? Kan pasti misal ikut juga terjun ke dunia kopinya itu. Mungkin ada yang misal baru dapat pelajaran di situ atau gimana? Mungkin berbagi pengalaman.
Yeah. When we started this project, I actually started with a flavor wheel project, which is this. This is, we call it roda rasa kopi Indonesia, and this is one of my first projects with Seniman. And there's definitely a lot of challenges learning about specialty coffee because in many ways it's very technical, and I'm not exactly the person behind the bar. So there's a lot of technical terms and technical techniques that I needed to learn or at least understand. But a lot of the research that we did together about this book is also mostly cultural and social and historical as well. So I took a lot of observations about the differences between the coffee cultures in Bali and the coffee culture in Jakarta, or when I was comparing it when I was also studying in San Francisco and learning about what third wave means to them, because the first time I heard about coffee waves, and I was at that time third wave. It was around 2012 or 2013. I was in San Francisco, and I already heard a lot about people talking about specialty coffee and coffee's third wave. But the definition is really scrambled. And no one really knows what it means. And a lot of people, mostly people talk about third wave as in coffee shops with Wi-Fi or a good surface. So that's what I learned. That's what my understanding was, learning about what specialty coffee is, or third wave culture. But when I came to Seniman, what's really unique about Seniman is that Seniman is not only a coffee shop. It's actually, the coffee shop itself is actually just really like one bit from the entire business. We have a roastery, we have a processing sites, and we also have a farm. And that's where I learned about the supply chain in the coffee industry, because we don't source the coffee from anywhere else. We do source it from anywhere else, but mostly we also source it, we grow it ourselves, and we process it ourselves. And that's where a lot of creativity and a lot of the control in the process can take place. And to me, that's how I really come to understand about the concept of the origins new wave, which early on we actually termed it for fourth wave, which is basically the origins, understanding their coffee potentials and trying to take more control over the processing and creating that quality, achieving that quality from end to end. And that's basically the biggest learning that I had at Seniman. And I don't know if I'm working somewhere else, maybe that's going to be a totally different understanding about what specialty coffee is and what specialty coffee in Indonesia could be, and what new wave is, what fourth wave is.
Oke, jadi kurang lebih seperti itu ya teman-teman. Jadi emang Roda Rasa ini juga salah satu proyeknya teman-teman seniman juga ya, yang udah buat. Dan ngomongin soal rasa nih, rasa kopi nih. Nah, ini sana geser ke sebelahnya nih. Woi, oke. Ini ada Bli Edi. Bli Edi ini dari Karana Global ya, Bli ya? Benar. Nah, nih Bli, ada pertanyaan nih Bli. Bli sendiri ini kan besar selama gelombang kedua katanya. Dan gelombang ketiga sedang tinggi-tingginya gitu. Apa yang Bli Edi lihat dari transisi ketiga gelombang terakhir ini yang terjadi?
Okay, thank you. First, I want to introduce myself. My name is Kade Edi. So I work for Seniman as a roaster and also as a coffee farm and processing at Karana site. So I come up in this industry, business coffee, call it like a second wave or third wave. I grew up and start like about 2012. So I mean there is like the coffee came in Indonesia. It was like a normal coffee, like a coffee tumbuh, very like a basic coffee. And I starting like Rodney. I was grow up in family, which is I was nothing to do with coffee. I was like a wood carving. Nothing to do with coffee. When I met him, it's like this is none. So until Rodney introduced me to coffee and start how to roast, and then I'm still like 6 months I understand what like coffee is. Well, I know just coffee to brew, very basic coffee. Fine, put hot water and a lot of sugar, something like that. That's just very well. Like my brain is coffee is like bitter. I put sugar, and then really good coffee. It's not really coffee. It's good. Really just sugar. Sometimes you put like a very like condensed milk, something like that. And then from that, I met Rodney and then start learn how to roast. And I knew it's like coffee is like a call its origin, which is still what is origin. And then Gayo in Sumatra and like Gayo, Sumatra, Sulawesi, Papua, but all this like island in Indonesia has like origin, and they grow coffee. Then and the question is like how do you think about that second second wave? For me, like second wave is like a transition from like how to really like a long time ago, what years people just doing a lot of copies, make a lot of copy, like very basic, easy copy, like instant copy, whatever that brand that has become like a proper with the education, with knowledge, how people drink coffee. Try to understand what is the origin. They want to know how to process, how to like roast the coffee, things like that. So yeah, it's quite interesting, like transition. I'm start with that transition, which is from the like nothing to do with coffee, carving and the coffee and yeah, the second wave.
Oke, berarti nih saat perpindahan ke gelombang kedua ataupun ketiga, kan pasti gue harus kayak kembali beradaptasi lagi dengan kayak kan ini transisi gitu. Apakah ada kendala itu di awal-awal?
They asked me to speak Bahasa. It's been my English is very horrible.
It's okay, yes.
They want me to speak Bahasa, so I will do it. Tadi apa pertanyaannya?
Sudah kedugaan. Jadi kan saat transisi kedua bahkan yang ketiga ini kan lagi tinggi-tingginya juga, pasti beli perlu beradaptasi dengan gaya baru karena ini sistem transisi gitu. Apakah ada kendala di situ?
Mungkin kebetulan karena aku tuh mulainya memang bukan dari punya basic kopi ya. So, jadi dari awal itu memang benar-benar kita mulai dari awal. Jadi pengalamanku di gelombang pertama adalah gimana aku minum kopi. yang mungkin di Bali itu dengan yang unik dengan upacara, ya upacara kita minum kopi, terus kita bertamu ke rumah orang, itu sudah pertama yang kita ditawari adalah kopi, dan kedua mungkin aku sebagai pelaku kopi, jadi transisi itu pelaku kopi itu gimana aku belajar, jadi mulailah aku belajar di gelombang kedua, gimana kita memperlakukan kopi, membahasakan kopi, menyeduh, jadi memproses dan menyajikan kopi. Kita bersosial dengan kopi. Di situ mungkin gelombang kedua. Jadi menurut saya sih adalah saat yang tepat karena memang aku nggak punya basic sebelumnya.
Jadi nggak terlalu kaget lah ya?
Enggak.
Oke. Saya kagetin boleh? Nah, Bli, kan saya juga udah baca di salah satu ini di bukunya ini kan jadi banyak chapter gitu ya teman-teman. Di salah satu chapter ini membahas tentang keluarga Bli, dari orang tua bahkan anak juga dibahas tentang dunia kopi. Berarti keluarga itu sedekat itu dengan kopi ya, Bu?
Kalau dibilang dekat, enggak sih sebenarnya. Dari awal yang tadi saya bilang tadi, saya besar di keluarga yang punya darah seni kan. Jadi sebelum aku di kopi itu aku juga patung, lukis sempat. Terus di keluarga, jadi akulah orang yang di keluargaku yang mencoba sesuatu yang beda. Karena apa? Karena aku bertemu Mr. Rodney. Jadi aku ketemu dia, aku belajar, dan di situ aku lihat ada kecintaan. Jadi mungkin dari aku pernah melakukan berkecimpung nggak jauh dari seni, aku mikirnya kopi itu adalah bisa seni. Kita bisa berkreasi, jadi apapun kita bisa lakukan, kita berkarya. Makanya dari yang dulu kopi yang gelombang pertama itu kopi cuma pahit, kita cabur gula, selesai. Terus di gelombang kedua kita bikin, kita beda proses. Saya baru tahu beda proses itu adalah bisa beda rasa, beda cara bentuknya bisa menjadi beda rasa, dan beda cara penyajiannya bisa beda harga. Jadi di situ saya lebih kurius, cenderung belajar. Terus karena juga saya berangkat dari keluarga yang kurang mampu kan, jadi secara finansial aku juga ingin mendapatkan income. Jadi di situ aku coba belajar sampai sedikit mengerti apa yang bisa kita jual, dan syukur bisa diterima sebagai roaster, sebagai dulu di Seniman dari tahun 2012 ya sampai sekarang masih di sini, masih sangat nyaman. Jadi aku merasa aku sangat suka apa yang aku lakukan, jadi orang bisa mengapresiasi, itu aja sih.
Oke, keren juga ya. Tepuk tangan dulu dong buat teman-temannya. Jadi di Seniman ini emang rasa keluarganya itu sangat kental banget ya. Jadi kita kayak saling memiliki, jadi oh ini keluargaku, jadi semua merasa keluarga. Saya juga merasa dianggap keluarga ya, Mister. Dan ini tadi sudah berbincang-bincang. Nah, sekarang yang paling pojok ini, nah ini dia. Kita bincang-bincang sedikit ya, Mister Tony ya. Oh, boleh. Nah, saya senang nih, soalnya bisa bahasa Indonesia ya. Bisa. Dan ini untuk Beli Tony kali ya, karena sudah lama di Bali ya. Beli Tony juga sudah lama mengenal Beli Edi yang tinggal di Bali ini. Bukunya juga diawali dengan berbagai macam foto seremoni yang diambil oleh Beli Tony kan. Dan ciri khas Beli Tony ini fotonya nih kayak menggambarkan Bali banget gitu. Nah, apa Pak Tony ini sudah mulai memfoto itu dari lama, dan kenapa memilih Bali ini kayak menjadi destinasi yang sangat bagus untuk karya-karyanya Pak Tony? Boleh, bahasa Inggris, bahasa Indonesia boleh. Oh bahasa Bali boleh juga. Kalau bisa bahasa Bali.
Okay, as you heard, my name is Tony. Okay, so I've known Eddie since 1985, I think.
It's not bad at all.
So,
2005. You get wrong number.
yeah, so it was a good friendship because I was also buying art, doing art, exporting art, and then doing photography was a hobby. But the good thing now is that a lot of people have said my photos are different than most people that other photograph. Also because I'm involved with the religion, with the high priest, and so I get times to go to very good ceremonies, and I get special access. So you get a little bit closer than most people. So I try to capture a feeling in the photos. There was a photographer from National Geographic who said, you know, your photos are excellent, but you lack experience in technical procedures, which I don't know. But he said the main thing in a photo is for the photo to speak for itself. You can look at the photo and get a feeling, and that I hope my photos do, you know. That's my goal.
Oke, tapi emang apakah Pak Tony ini ciri khasnya tentang Bali atau kayak ada karya-karya foto lain tentang di luar Bali?
Oh jelas, kalau saya keluar negeri, walaupun if I go to Egypt or if I go to Thailand or Laos, I concentrate mainly on human interest photo, meaning go to villages, take photos of daily events, and just characters of people. I love to do portraits of old people and kids because those are the best. You know, they're the most innocent. When they're really young, they don't care, and when they're old, they don't care either. So it's when it's when they're 18, 19, they have to pose, you know, like, and look good or look cool, look pretty. Yeah. So I hope that the photos in the book. I mean, I was really touched by it because it's always nice to see your photos being published, you know. I mean, I do it for my own hobby, but if something like this is very special.
Keren. Jadi gimana nih awalnya? Kok bisa tertarik karya fotonya dibawa ke dalam buku tentang kopi? Mungkin ada ajakannya kayak gimana nih? Kok bisa sampai tertarik?
Look, saya kaget. I was also a bit shocked because Rodney said, I'm going to make a book about coffee and I want some of your photos on it. But I don't have any coffee photos. I mean, I know nothing about coffee, you know, except just to drink it. So he said, no, I mean, we want to introduce the book with cultural photos of Bali. So that I have many. So I said, sure, you know, I'm honest to do it. So that's why they're there.
We also, I mean, before the book, Michelle and I run an online magazine called Sing Along. And a few years ago, we asked Tony to do a photographic essay for Sing Along, focused on coffee, but coffee in ceremony. Because coffee is used a lot in ceremony. And on a daily basis, on a special ceremony, it's always used a lot. And with Tony's photos, he produced a number of photos focusing on that. That was before the book, and some of those photos are obviously in the book. But there was also, I mean, the title of the book, Bali Coffee, I mean, that was forced upon us by our publisher, who's back there. That because Bali, obviously, for an international market, Bali is a popular brand, okay? And coffee, so Bali Coffee. Okay, so for him to publish the book, we have to include that in the title. All right, that's not such a problem because we've got lovely photos of Bali, and we can easily get photos of coffee as well. But really, so that's where Tony also fits in, not just to our lives, because he's in my life for a long time as well, but obviously I'm younger than Eddie, so for less time.
I know you're going to say that.
So, for us, not just Bali as a cultural centre, okay, so Bali as a place, Bali is a fascinating visual place, but the Origins New Wave, I'm going to give you a very, very quick example of what we're talking about when we talk about origin and when we talk about this new wave. Okay. Because I was thinking about when we listen to everyone talking. In the coffee world, in the specialty coffee world, there is a chart. There is a chart in English, and it looks like that, but sort of like that. It has English flavours. All right. So if you want to progress in the coffee world, anywhere in the world, and you want to go through all the different degrees and the licenses and you want to trade, you have to trade in English. And not just that, you have to trade in English using specific terms coming from what is an American or what is now a European, it's called the SCA, the Specialty Coffee Association, the wheel, the flavour wheel it's called. And it looks sort of round like a wheel, and it has English flavours and aromas placed on the wheel. So you imagine that you're a barista or you're a roaster or you're a farmer in Indonesia and you want to connect to a language and you want to connect to a market. You fundamentally have to play in English and you have to play within the wheel that they give you. So there might be a flavour on that wheel that says dried apricot. Now, dried apricot to a whitey is not a problem, okay? Oh, dried apricot, I know what that tastes like. I know what that smells like. But try to explain that to a barista who's never seen a dried apricot. But yet they have to flow through all the exams and they have to trade using the term dried apricot. And that is just a small summary of just one small example of this sort of circular wheel of colonialism which has funded the coffee industry. So by origin and by using the word new wave and by producing an Indonesian language flavour wheel using common and understood flavours to explain and taste of coffee, already removes the hierarchical idea that now we have to play in English. So it's a very powerful weapon, but that weapon is used by the SCA, by the Specialty Coffee Association, to basically colonise where they have grown and exported coffee for hundreds of years. So the fact that just now Origin takes back some of that power by using a new flavour wheel. I mean, in the English one, there's no durian. You know, surprise, surprise. But there's not. But, you know, as well as when someone says in Indonesia, oh, that tastes like mango. Now, to an English person, it's sort of a very broad term, mango. But there's many different types of mango. So what is the mango you're talking about when you say mango? What is the banana you're talking about when you say banana? So that goes down a path where Michelle and I worked on writing a dictionary called a lexicon of flavour, and that ties into this wheel. So it's now an app which is called the Roda Rasa, Copy Indonesian. So you can download the app, and you can see the dictionary, the lexicon, to explain those flavours in that wheel. Yep. Igor's downloading it now as we speak. No, so that's where Origin takes back some of the power that has been sort of assumed by non-coffee growing countries. They won't be named. But, you know, non-coffee growing countries are consuming countries. Coffee growing countries are producing countries. And just the beginning, this is just the beginning of this new wave, where coffee growing countries are beginning to have a middle class, and that middle class is starting to feel proud of their agricultural produce. And within that awareness comes the power.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
I'd like to hear this from both of you, so maybe Australian perspective and an Indonesian perspective. In the post-pandemic world, can Bali become a coffee destination, a coffee tourism destination like Melbourne or Italy, which doesn't grow coffee?
And nor does Melbourne. Not yet, but yeah, well, Origin is becoming a tourist destination. Origin, coffee growing origins. So Bali is a coffee growing origin, and those origins are attractive for people interested in coffee or people interested in agriculture. The beautiful thing about Bali is, unlike many of the other origins that grow coffee, to your sort of question, is that Bali already has an infrastructure to deal with tourists. And that's an important thing if you want to include origin visits. And the distances between origin, the things about origin within Bali. Bali's a small island. So an hour and a half, you're up in 1,500 metres where coffee can be grown. And then within that time, you can come back to Ubud. From Ubud, you can go down, you can see processing. It's all manageable. Many other origins, even within Indonesia, like Toraja, Sumatra, the distances between everything is much more difficult to manage as a destination, a tourist destination.
Okay. You want a question? Yeah, yes.
How long has Indonesia been a coffee producer, and was it sort of influenced by the Dutch, or were they drinking it for thousands of years here, or what is coffee here?
A very good planted question. Hundreds and hundreds of years, but basically, no, not at all. No, coffee was introduced by the Dutch and the Portuguese.
It's not a naturally grown plant.
No, it's not. It's a forced production. So, actually, in the book, we deal with the waves, because this is fundamentally the concept. But on the top wave, the top is the American. Is how generally the world views waves, right? Do you want me to read? Okay. So, and this is the Indonesian. They roughly correspond in time frame, but not always in the same space. For instance, the obvious one for second wave, in American terms, is Starbucks. Okay? But in terms of the book, Michelle and I believe that that's third wave for Indonesia, right? But you'll see here, before first wave, I've termed it, and before first wave is independence, before independence, which is basically the Dutch or Portuguese making, growing coffee.
So they actually brought the plant.
They actually brought the plants.
Do you know from where?
That was, coffee was traded as a political toy, tool, right, not a toy. But, coffee was given to kings, queens, countries as gifts. And then to plant in the colonies. So whether that was given to the Spanish and they would take it to Guatemala or Panama or wherever they were, Mexico, wherever they were going to conquer.
Take one of Eddie's green seeds and plant it and get coffee?
Yes, you can now. You mean now? Yeah, sure. Now, as long as the altitude was correct and the variety was correct, yes, it would grow. Yeah. But it was initially before independence. It's a commodity like salt, like whatever else was being traded, and that was given as gifts to countries for political alliances and political, joining power, and that was a very important tool in that growth. Yeah, I'm saying. same spelling.
Yeah, so coffee was traded a lot in that era and was also smuggled a lot by Dutch traders. And I think it was first introduced to Java. Some people also say gayo, brought by Arab Muslims, because they also big coffee drinkers, to gayo. So that's one part of the story, but a lot of people also believe that it was first grown in Java, and it was first cultivated in Java, and then we had the big coffee leaf rust happening in 17th century or 18th century. And then the plantation moved to Gayo, and that's where the big coffee plantations exist to this day.
Yeah, the main growing places in Indonesia are still Java and Sumatra.
Oke, sebelum ke sesi tanya jawab berikutnya, ini ada yang menarik nih menurut saya juga ya. Roda rasa, kita balik lagi nih misalnya, roda rasa nih. Kalau kita pengen belajar tentang roda rasa nih, apakah kita belajar otodidak atau mungkin ada aplikasi atau apa yang bisa jadi panduan kita untuk belajar? Ini kan sebenarnya kayak bisa dipelajari ya untuk semua orang ya.
Yeah. So this flavor wheel is basically made to be accessible to anyone. So there's really no right or wrong, and it's basically to help activate our imagination and to kind of making us easier to understand what it is that we are tasting. To help us in vocabularizing our what we're tasting and feeling. And in terms of how we can learn this, we have posters. I mean, it's really as simple as a graphic, and we put it out online. And since day one, it's always been free. Anyone can download it, and it has been downloaded up to 10,000 times, I believe, to this day.
Mainly by us.
Mainly by us. And then we also have the posters. We also made the app, and over 2 years we actually updated the wheel as well. So what you see here is actually going to be different from what you will see in the book. The book is the latest version, obviously. There's not big changes, but along the way we feel like there's a little bit of iterations that we needed to do. So along the way we improved the wheel. It's grown in Bali.
About 3,000, 3,000 hectare, I believe. They have production about, now about 16,000 tons, this year, last year.
And how does that compare to the rest of Indonesia? Is it just a drop in the well? Or is it significant?
Say it again?
So compared to production in Indonesia, how much of it is grown in Bali?
Bali is very, very tiny, small Bali, but compared with Sumatra is way lot bigger, so about 80% more bigger. So here is quite small, and then the harvest just once a year. So it's in Sumatra, because there's a lot of copies. Every side they have a copy. Typically has in a whole year they have a harvest. So yeah, it's things like that.
Oke, mungkin teman-teman yang mau nanya lagi, silakan. Bisa ada waktu.
Yes, this is not in the book, or probably part of the most important thing in the book is that Seniman Coffee Shop is the one who pioneered this book. I want to know, where did you get the inspiration with the name Seniman, and why is Seniman is really happening? Because I'm staying close by, and it's always busy every day from morning until night. What's your secret?
Free coffee.
No, I pay for everything.
You don't pay. You would be amazed. You offer something, no payment. Oh, busy. Seniman, the name. Seniman is, Indonesian for male artist, of which I am a male artist. I always wanted to do a tea brand called Seniwati, female artist, but we haven't done that yet. But Seniman is about art. I mean, that's where the name comes from. Why it's busy? I don't know. The secret is that I think everyone just enjoys a curious life. You know, I think the brand, the thing, the whatever it is, we don't see it as a coffee shop. Actually, we've worked together for years, and you don't find it work, number one. Yeah. I don't think we all come to work. Maybe Michelle does, because she's very conscientious. But you know, I think we want to have the feeling that coffee is a very broad, a very broad field. Yeah, it's not. We're not running a coffee shop. We're just running a thing, and I think that thing can be whatever the people working in that thing want it to be. So some people, yeah, we make coffee, yeah, we roast, yes, we do green beans, yes, we do those things, but that we're not doing them because we have to do them. We're actually doing them because someone is interested in doing them. And then that someone leads, and then other people think that's quite interesting, I think we'll do it. So I think that it's self-generating. If we were just running a coffee shop, we would all be so very bored, I can tell you. Because running a coffee shop is basically fairly boring. I mean, in terms of, now a customer comes in, now you serve them coffee and thank you very much, rah, rah, rah. I mean, that's not the goal. The goal is not that. That's an end point. I don't have to stop, I can keep going.
Jadi teman-teman, tadi juga udah dibahas ya. Ada nama program dari seniman namanya Sing Along, itu dulu berupa majalah online ya. Dan sekarang setiap hari minggunya itu ada sesi kayak panel diskusi, itu ada di Denpasar, di toko seniman Denpasar, itu di Jalan Sudirman. Jadi nanti setiap hari minggu teman-teman bisa di sana kayak kalau mau ngobrol-ngobrol, sharing atau apa, bisa langsung ke sana aja. Itu setiap jam 1 siang. Nah, dan besok bakal ada book launch juga di Denpasar, di toko seniman dari jam 1 siang. Teman-teman bisa langsung datang aja ke sana. Kalau mau tahu informasi lebih lanjut di @toko-seniman-kopi ya, langsung aja tuh di informasi lebih detail di sana. Dan ini nih, mungkin ada yang mau nanya lagi nih? Ada yang mau nanya lagi? Oke, boleh. Silakan.
I have questions, yeah, and first of all, I would like to have a comment about the book. So, slightly reading a book when I drink coffee at Toko Seniman Denpasar, and surprisingly, because like a book and research indicate, yeah, and so comprehensive book. For me, it's like a summary investigation about Bali Coffee. So it's like knowledge, complete knowledge. And I ask you, and also about the content. It's so experience and experimental, social and environmental sustainability, and community livelihood and tradition. So I have a question about you, Rodney, Michelle, and Pelajari. What is the main purpose of and of mind or perspective of the book? How you all want to deliver to the readers, or any insights of the book? Like what make 3 points, like the purpose of the book. Because this is a book is so high value, like a Kamasan style. I really like seeing the map of Bali is so great. And I have also download about this roda rasa, kopi. And do you have any plan to develop or improve? Because I saw this in 2020, or about the next 3 years. Of do you have any plan to improve or develop? Thank you.
So maybe I will add a little bit about Sing Along first. So Sing Along is my very first project with Seniman. Like that's when I was still freelancing with Seniman. It's an online magazine, and it's about coffee, but not about specialty coffie. It can be about non-specialty coffee. It can be anything about coffee. So it's very broad. And the questions that I had in mind at the time was also like, what is it for? Like, why a coffee shop will also want to make an online magazine and spend money on the writers? And it was quite a lot of money at the time to spend monthly on the writers. But I think Seniman has a lot of side projects like that, you know, and I think that's also part of why maybe seniman is very active, and maybe like what you said, it's like very lively. It's because we don't, at least I don't really see it as a coffee shop only, and I think everyone who's working here don't really see it as a coffee shop. And regarding about the content and about the apps, I really, that's one of my projects also, to develop the apps. So the app is in conjunction with an aromatic kit and a sensory lexicon and like a coffee, which is basically a coffee dictionary, and definitions of what aftertaste means or what sweet means according to coffee professionals. And that's sort of like a one-time thing that we did, but I really like to develop it more. We have a copying form there, and I would like to find a way to make it more easier to use for not just specialty coffee people or people who are coffee professionals, but also anyone at home, how to use it. Because flavor wheel, even for people who are unfamiliar with coffee, is still pretty hard to understand. So my personal goal, my sort of personal passion, I guess, is sort of to find a way to make the apps more accessible for anyone in Indonesians. And that's in Indonesian, right, the app. And we had a lot of questions about people asking, because it's downloaded around the world as well, and a lot of people ask why it's not in English, but it's obviously not going to be in English. So, yeah.
Tadi gimana, apa isi buku, apa tujuan daripada buku itu? Mungkin sedikit dari salah satu yang saya idenya dari Rodney dan Michelle adalah gimana konektivitas koneksi antara budaya dan kopi di Bali. Jadi kita ngomongin budaya, mungkin seni ya, di Bali itu nggak bisa jauh-jauh dari seni. Jadi dibuatlah ide si Rodney, Mr. Rodney membuat cover seperti Kamasan style apa segala macam, dan juga sedikit juga perjalanan masa transisi saya terjun di dunia kopi dengan yang berawal dari di daerah Gianyar ya, orang yang biasanya orang berkecimpung di seni atau paling enggak orang sekolah buat kerja sebagai di hospitality gitu kan. Jadi itu dipush sama orang tuanya. Dan celakanya adalah saya tuh dulu tuh nggak mau sama ini. Jadi celakanya nggak mau. Jadi disitulah mungkin dari gambaran perjalanan daripada sedikit masa transisi saya seperti itu.
Mungkin ada tambahan lagi?
Udah dilihat tadi 30 detik.
Jadi nanti kalau teman-teman yang kayak masih penasaran atau pengen nanya-nanya lagi nih, atau mungkin kayak pertanyaan masih kayaknya kurang menjawab tentang seluk-beluk buku, nanti abis ini kita sharing-sharing sesi bareng aja, samperin mereka, atau enggak besok kalian langsung datang aja ke toko seniman di Denpasar, itu dari jam 1. Kita besok lebih dari 2 jam kita bedah bukunya sama orang-orangnya langsung ya. Jadi kalau kalian masih belum puas nih ya, ini karena waktunya sudah kebatasan waktu, kita udah akan selesai. Jadi teman-teman, thank you buat semua yang udah bertahan sampai malam sore hari ini. Tepuk tangan dong buat kita dong. Jadi ini terima kasih dukungan melalui patron program Yayasan Mudra Swari Saraswati, dan kepada para partner festival yang membuat Ubud Writers and Readers Festival dapat terlaksana. Jadi buat teman-teman kalau informasi lebih lanjut langsung saja follow di @ubudwritersfestival on Instagram, di Twitter dan Facebook juga ada, atau langsung aja ke websitenya di ubudwritersfestival.com. Dan jangan lupa follow juga sosial media dari Seniman Kopi ya, di Instagram kalian bisa cek di Seniman Kopi, terus ada juga di toko seniman, ada juga Seniman Spirit ya, bener ya. Ya nanti langsung kalian follow sosial media, dan jangan lupa beli bukunya. Karena katanya masih ada harga promo atau gimana? Oh, sudah. Ini kalau kalian beli bukunya sekarang, kalian langsung dapat kopi gratis. Ya, kelasnya gede nanti ya. Boleh nambah, enak. Boleh, tapi lebihin lah 20.000 ya. Oke.
Yeah, we have 4 special bags. This is super rare edition. We're not gonna make it again. So the first 4 people are gonna have these bags. We'll show it to you later.
Oke, itu dia tuh, langsung tuh. Oke, thank you semuanya. Tepuk tangan sekali lagi buat kita semua. Yo, thank you, bye-bye. Sampai jumpa di video selanjutnya.